Welcome to this week's edition of Outdoors Online, a weekly webcast produced by the North Dakota Game and Fish Department. I'm your host, Mike Anderson. Today we're going to start the first part of a two-part series on ice fishing previews on district lakes around the state. We're going to talk with all 8 fisheries district supervisors for this week and for next week. My first guest this week is North Central Fisheries District Supervisor Jason Lee. How are ice conditions shaping up in the North Central District?
They're looking pretty good so far. We've had some cool nights recently where we're putting some ice on, and I visited with a number of anglers that have been out giving it a try already, so it's looking good. Not much for snow, so access is good.
Sure. Let's move into walleye populations in your district.
Okay. Lake Audubon is typically our busiest walleye lake in the winter. As far as the fish population, I would expect similar to last year, a good number of 14 to 19 inch walleyes. One thing we are doing this winter is we're conducting a creel survey on Lake Audubon. That's where we do it every third year. We'll have our creel clerk out working on the lake 4 days a week. And the creel clerk will work around the lake and interview anglers, ask questions on what they're fishing for, how long they fished, what they've caught, which provides some good information for us on the overall fishery. So I would encourage anglers to take the time to visit with the clerk if they happen to run into her.
Okay. How are walleye populations on some of your district lakes?
They're good. In looking at the different lakes throughout the district, some I would recommend for walleye would be Scooby Lake, Lake Brecken, Coal Lake, Antelope Lake, Clear Lake, Hintz Lake is a new one. Richard Lake, Hidden Woods got a good walleye population.
So a lot of good lakes for walleye fishing in North Central.
Right.
Okay, let's move on to the pike populations.
Okay. For pike, Buffalo Lodge, Rice Lake, McCody Lake would be some of the top ones. And if you're looking for bigger pike, I would look at Lake Audubon, Lake Metagoshi, and Brush Lake.
Now, Lake Audubon you can't spear.
Right. And the reason why you can't spear is there's muskie in Lake Audubon. Oh. So we don't want pike spears accidentally spearing a muskie.
Sure. Let's move on to some of your panfish lakes.
Okay. For bluegill, I would recommend Metagoshi, Harmony Lake, and Nelson Lake.
How about perch?
Perch, we have perch in a lot of lakes throughout the district. They all don't have larger perch populations, but some of the lakes that have larger perch would be Antelope Lake, Clear Lake, and McCody.
Okay, you know, much of the state, Jason, we didn't have a lot of snow last year, not a lot of moisture this summer. How are water levels? We're
down a couple feet in most of our water bodies throughout the district, so we could certainly use some more water, but in general, not a big risk of winter kill. Access is still pretty good for most of the lakes, so we're still looking okay, but we could sure use the moisture.
Okay, overall in the North Central District, how is ice fishing going to be?
Well, I hope it's good. Hopefully we have a fairly open winter again, so access is good, but I think it should be a good year.
A lot of good information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joining me now is Todd Kaspers, fisheries biologist in charge of the Devil's Lake system. Todd, how are ice conditions shaping up on Devil's Lake?
Well, we're off to a pretty good start so far. We had some, cold weather early on, and then, ice conditions they're variable, of course. Not the whole lake freezes over at the same time because it's a big lake, of course. But, in areas where anglers are going, it seems like, kind of around that 10, 11-inch ice range we're seeing now.
Let's move into your fish populations. How are walleye populations?
Walleye are doing fairly well. You probably noticed this year that there's lower numbers of those kind of prime keepers, those 15 to 20 inch size fish. That's from lower reproduction in 2013 to 2015, so we didn't have a whole lot of those fish to start out with, so now that they're older and bigger, we have lower numbers of those. But we have good numbers of other size fish, bigger ones and smaller ones as well.
Okay, how about your northern pike populations?
Pike are doing fine, just like they have been for many years in a row up at Devil's Lake. We have a lot of those kind of 21 to 28 inch size pike, so we're doing really well on pike.
Okay, you get a lot of panfish fishing on Devil's Lake. How are the panfish populations?
Our panfish on Devil's Lake is mostly the yellow perch, especially in the wintertime. Perch they're doing all right as well. There's good numbers of those kind of 8 to 10-inch size fish, and then smaller fish as well. But anglers might notice there's a few less of those kind of jumbos over 10 inches long this year.
Okay, overall, how is ice fishing going to be on Devil's Lake?
Well, that's always kind of a hard thing to predict. Just based on the fish numbers, I mean, it should be a decent winter, but it always depends on the forage abundance for the fish. If they don't have trouble finding natural food to eat, they aren't as willing to go with what the anglers offer them. But, you know, overall it should be a pretty decent winter, I think.
As long as Mother Nature allows.
Yeah, I mean, it always depends on access conditions too. So,
Todd, you manage Devil's Lake and Stump Lake and Lake Irvine. How are the populations on Stump and Lake Irvine?
Oh, on Stump Lake, our walleye population is pretty good right now. We have above average numbers of kind of all sizes of fish, so there's a variety of sizes of fish for anglers to catch on Stump. Perch are doing pretty well as well, but most of the keepers will probably be kind of in that 8 to 10-inch range this year. Pike on Stump are a little below average, but they're good size, and our average pike out there this year was between about 28 and 34 inches, so they're nice sized fish.
How are populations on Lake Irvine?
Oh, they're doing pretty well as well. Our walleye population on Irvine is above average right now, and there's a good variety of sizes of walleye for anglers to catch. Plenty of nice keeper size fish out there for walleyes. Our pike populations on Irvine kind of tend to be a little bit overabundant, so anglers should definitely not be shy about keeping some pike from Lake Irvine. Probably help to improve growth rates if anglers were to harvest some more of them. And perch on Lake Irvine tend to be pretty low in numbers. We don't see a lot of perch out there, but the ones we do see are usually nice sized fish.
A lot of good information, Todd. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Joining me now is Northeast District Fisheries Supervisor Randy Hiltner. Randy, how are ice conditions shaping up in the northeast part of the state?
It's putting on ice pretty well with the early cold snap. A lot of places have around 8 to 10 inches of ice already.
Okay, let's move into your fish populations. How are walleye populations in your district lakes?
There's good walleye populations down in Wells County, Goose Lake, for instance, Herdsfield Lake. Lake Cole is a very good walleye lake now. Lake Addie also down that way.
Okay, let's move into your pike populations.
Yeah, pike are pretty ubiquitous up there in the northeast. We've got some lakes with pike, natural lakes that are really good for pike, like Island Lake, which sustained some winter kill last year, but it really didn't put a dent in the fish. There's Sibley Lake, that's a good pike lake, Lake Juanita, and basically most places have pike, but those are some of the better ones.
Okay, let's move into the panfish.
Black crappie, I don't have too many waters with those, but Whitman Dam has some nice crappie in it. And for numbers, Hommy Dam is probably the best reservoir up there.
How about perch?
Yellow perch are, again, in most lakes and reservoirs up there, but Hommy Dam currently has high densities of 8 to 10-inch perch. There's good perch down in Silver Lake Wildlife Management Area. And Herdsfield Toughies get some nice perch too.
Okay, and bluegills?
We've got a few lakes with good bluegills. Lake Upsilon in the Turtle Mountains has some bigger fish. And Red Willow Lake has lots of numbers with some big fish also.
Okay, how are the water levels maintaining up in the northeast?
Probably relatively good compared to the rest of the state, but still down, especially in the natural lakes.
Okay, overall ice fishing should be good in the northeast?
Yeah, you should have lots of opportunities, lots of places to go. There's bigger fish, nice walleyes, nice northern pike, and some panfish.
A lot of good information, Randy. Thank you.
Thanks.
Joining me now is Southeast Fisheries Supervisor B.J. Kratz. B.J., how are ice conditions shaping up in the southeast part of the state?
Ice conditions are currently pretty good for this time of year. Most lakes have froze over well. Good quality ice, and ice thickness is varying from 6 to 9 inches presently. So obviously not much snow cover on the ice yet, so it's shaping up to be a good ice season as far as safety. We like to see that.
Let's move into your fish populations. How are walleye populations in here?
Walleye populations continue to be really good in the Southeast District. We have, one of our main focuses anymore is to manage walleye populations in stock walleye fisheries. So we have an abundance of these fisheries. A couple that come to mind as being, good fisheries are like West Moran Lake down in the southeast. That's got a very good walleye population currently in a nice size range too. You've got smaller fish for eating purposes and opportunity to catch larger fish too. Another one that has currently good walleye numbers is Barnes Lake. Traditionally, that lake has pretty high walleye abundance and nice size fish. They can be a little bit difficult to catch, and I'd like to remind anglers in general that walleyes tend to be low light creatures, so don't get frustrated if you're out there trying to catch them during the day and you don't catch anything, because if you typically wait until dark, that's when things happen, and then correspondingly in the morning also.
Okay, let's move on to your pike populations.
Yep. Historically our pike numbers are holding. We don't stock as many pike as we used to, just because most folks tend to prefer walleye. So that being said, we still have some pretty good pike lakes. Coldwater Lake in McIntosh County has got a pretty good pike population, and good size range, small fish to fish, close to 20 pounds. And if you like a little smaller lake, we've got little impoundments scattered throughout the district too. Limits and Seafelt's kind of a neat little lake, if you will. It has a pretty high population of good eater-sized pike right now too. So lots of opportunities out there for all fish species, really.
Okay, let's move on to panfish. You've got some of the most popular crappie fishing lakes in your district. Let's talk about those.
Yep, and this holds true, at least it has for quite a few years. We have Jamestown and Pipestem reservoirs, which are in the best shape that they've ever been in terms of crappie numbers, and the size is good too. We've got a lot of opportunity not only to catch numbers, but to catch nice fish too, particularly in Pipestem. Jamestown, lots of numbers, maybe not quite the size range potential there, and depending on what size fish you want to catch. Perch, we've got a few perch lakes. Erickson Lake still continues to exhibit great characteristics of a perfect perch fishery, in that the fish grow quickly and they grow large. I mean, I think we even sampled one that was close to 16 inches this year. So there's some nice big perch in there, and there's quite a few numbers.
Okay, how about bluegill?
We've got a few fisheries that we're working on to try to bring that opportunity up a little bit, but your typical bluegill waters are Brewer Lake, has a pretty good bluegill population. Clawson Springs is another one. These are impoundments on tributaries that typically are lakes that have better bluegill populations, are a little deeper. It just makes better winter habitat for those fish, and they're able to overwinter, and survival is better. So Brewer Lake, Clawson Springs, Heinrich Martin has always been a good little bluegill lake too. So
okay, let's talk about water levels in the Southeast District.
Yep. Down overall, but not as bad as it could be. The far southeast part of the district has taken the majority of the hit. We're down 6 to 7 feet in some of our lakes, and when you have 12 feet of water to start with, thankfully we haven't had any major fish kills yet. This summer we skated by with low lake levels, but we still managed to, come through with very, very limited, if any, fish kills that were really reported to us. But that being said, like I always say, less water means those fish are a little more condensed, and they can be a little more vulnerable to fishing, providing the dissolved oxygen doesn't get too low and so forth. So it's more fish in a smaller container. So
right. Overall, how is ice fishing going to be in the Southeast?
I think it'll be pretty good. It really depends on forage and all that stuff too, and people have to realize that when you don't catch fish, it doesn't mean that they're not there, and oftentimes it's just a reflection of what how much food that they have had to eat during, not just presently, but during the course of the summer. If these fish bulk up in the summer and they've got good reserves and stuff, their activity level through the winter in general is going to be less, and so you're not going to be experiencing these intense bites most often. But focus on the right times of the day for the right species, and be patient, and hopefully things will work out.
A lot of good information, BJ.
Thanks.
For rules and regulations on fishing in North Dakota, pick up a 2018 to 2020 North Dakota Fishing Guide or go to the Game and Fish website at gf.nd.gov. For the fishery staff and the rest of the staff here at the North Dakota Game and Fish Department, thanks for joining us for this week's Outdoors Online. We'll see you again next week.